If the amount of child support is a set calculation, how can anyone really contest these matters?
Child support pursuant to the statute is a set calculation, but there's a lot of subjective figures within that. So we cited one example earlier, which is, what is somebody's income? Just because somebody says, well, gee, pursuant to my tax return, I made $80,000 last year. Okay, super duper. That doesn't mean we have to take your word for it. No one polices tax returns. So it's not like, you give your tax figures over to your accountant and your accountant then starts cross-examining you and says, well, I don't really believe that you made $80,000 last year. Give me all the documentation that proves that. Of course, your accountant does not do that unless you pay them extra. There is what's called a verified return, but almost everyone does not do a verified return. In other words, you just present your W-2s and your deductions to your accountant. They run it through their computer and outspit your 1040 form. And that's pretty much the end of the analysis unless you get audited by the IRS. And ironically speaking, a child support case is very similar to an IRS audit. Certainly the IRS, if they're going to audit you, it means they already believe that you're not reporting accurately either income or deductions. And so the IRS is going to say, well, we want more documentation than what you're providing to us in terms of justification of what your income is or what your deductions are. And the child support case can be the same analysis. So it can say, just because you say, for instance, I made $80,000 last year, prove it. We want to see the W-2s. We want to see the 1099s. But we also, if you list out that you're paying $90,000 or $100,000 in expenses and showing no debt, we want to see how it is from your own perspective that you're able to pay $90,000, $100,000 worth of expenses on a gross income of $80,000. The two don't really make too much sense. Then if somebody is claiming business expenses on their return, either an individual return or a corporate return, the other side is entitled to see the documentary backup. So that's another way that just because you have the set calculation in place, things can be contested along those lines. So one can come in and say, well, I want to see not only your bank statements, but I want to see the receipts and invoices that make up your claimed business expenses, because I want to be able to explore whether these are legitimate business expenses or not. For instance, it's not uncommon in these types of cases, because oftentimes people don't get policed by the IRS. People throw on their personal meals. They'll throw on their personal rent or a portion thereof. They'll claim their personal car as a company car and use that as a deduction on their return. I've seen many cases where people even put their utilities, their own personal utilities, and claim that as the business utilities. This often happens when people operate businesses out of their own house. So that's another thing to really explore is, okay, you say you own a business. Where is that business operated out of? If it's operated out of your basement and you're claiming your electric bill as the business expense and taking it as a deduction, that in theory would be a deduction for child support purposes as well. But then where is it being shown that you actually are paying the electric bill on your personal finances as well? So one can certainly explore that in terms of pretrial disclosure. Those are among the many different issues as to just because you have a set calculation, how issues can be contested and further explored in pretrial disclosure.